Artificial Sun, Chapter 14. Alaria crossed her arms over her chest, watching Shemmai practice archery at the back of the house. Shemmai usually only practiced when the sun was setting, but today she practiced while it was still high in the sky. Alaria could see her daughter's frustration evident in the way she was handling the bow and arrow. Her shots were misplaced and rough, evidence of her absent-mindedness. Shemmai accidentally lodged her arrow so deeply into a stray barrel that she struggled to pull it out. When she tugged with all her might, she plucked the arrow so roughly that the momentum launched her onto the ground. When she stood up and reached for her arrow, her eyes found her mother's feet before they traveled up to her face, which harbored a knowing smile.
Oh, Shemmai.
Alaria sighed softly as she briskly walked toward Shemmai and leaned down next to her, examining her.
Are you hurt?
Shemmai shook her head and turned her body away from Alaria, bringing her knees to her chest.
I'm fine.
The sad tone of her voice betrayed her words. Alaria rested on her knees and placed one hand on Shemmai's shoulder.
Is this about Grunner?
Her voice was gentle, and it caused Shemmai to turn to her mother, eyes glossy with sudden tears. Alaria's heart tightened upon seeing her daughter so sad and vulnerable.
Why did he have to leave? I was just starting to get good.
Shemmai said, though Alaria knew her daughter's fondness for Grunner ran deeper than that. For the longest time, it was only the two of them, mother and daughter. She'd never had a father figure in her life, and Grunner was the embodiment of fatherly.
I'm sad too, but we always knew this day would come.
Alaria's hand never strayed from her daughter's shoulder as she spoke.
Grunner had business to take care of. He didn't want to leave.
Alaria knew this statement was true, for she read his mind. Shemmai didn't say anything at first, so Alaria held her daughter's hand instead of her shoulder.
I liked having him here.
Shemmai confessed.
He had the best stories.
I know, love.
Alaria smiled sadly.
I liked having him here too, but people come and go. What's important is that we have each other.
Alaria's hand traveled from Shemmai's hand to her chest, where it covered her heart.
Always.
Shemmai studied her mother's face. Alaria always tried to keep the two of them safe, and Shemmai knew it, but a part of her wished her mother had someone to share the burden with. Instead of expressing her concern and worry, Shemmai faked a smile and nearly forgot that her mother could read her mind. She placed her own hand over Alaria's and repeated,
Always.
Now come on.
Alaria stood up, followed by Shemmai.
Let me see what you've been practicing.
A smile of disbelief etched onto Shemmai's face, and she practically lunged for her bow and arrow.
Grunner said my feet were too close together, and that's why my balance was off. He told me to widen my stance.
She stood with her feet apart.
And that I should raise my bow arm.
Before Shemmai could demonstrate, sounds of shouts and hooves filled the street. Alaria froze and perked up as Shemmai continued demonstrating what she'd learned, oblivious to the sounds around her.
Shemmai.
Alaria hissed in a whisper, and the girl looked up in concern upon hearing the tone of her mother's voice.
Give me your hand.
Without hesitation, Shemmai rushed to grab her mother's hand, still holding her bow and arrow in her hand. The two of them made their way into the house, and Shemmai could then hear the commotion coming from outside. Alaria controlled her breathing and tried to listen to the jumbled thoughts of the people in the streets. Her face paled when she realized what was happening, and she rushed to the dresser in her bedchamber. Only once she reached it did she let go of Shemmai's hand. She pulled out the last drawer and scurried around for a familiar item. When Alaria pulled out a lawn item covered in cloth, Shemmai's mouth hung. Alaria sucked in a shaky breath and removed the cloth from her sword. She hadn't used her weapon in so long, yet it still felt like it fitted perfectly in her hand. Shemmai had no idea her mother even knew what a weapon looked like, much less how to use one. Alaria turned to her daughter. She got onto her knees so that she was leveled with her and prepared her speech.
Listen to me, love. In a few minutes, strange men are going to barge through our door and try to hurt us.
She kept a stern gaze on Shemmai when she spoke. Shemmai opened her mouth to ask questions, fear evident on her face, but Alaria spoke over her.
You must stay in my bedchamber. Whatever happens, you don't let them know you're here.
What about you?
Shemmai pitifully asked.
I want to stay with you.
She grabbed her mother's hand again as tears threatened to spill out of her eyes. She pulled Alaria's hand to her chest and said,
We must have each other. Always.
Alaria swallowed the lump forming in her throat, but kept her expression relaxed and gentle as she pulled her hand back and stroked Shemmai's hair.
I will always be with you no matter what. Remember that.
She leaned forward and pressed a long, lingering kiss to Shemmai's forehead. She didn't know if it was going to be her last opportunity to do so. Before Shemmai could say anything, the sound of the front door bursting open filled the empty house, followed by shouts. Alaria became desperate, so she stood up and said,
Remember what I told you.
She never gave Shemmai a chance to respond before she exited her bedchamber and shut the door behind her. 3 men clad in gold and red stood in her home, but Alaria wasn't afraid. She stepped forward.
What is the meaning of this?
They looked her up and down, and she could hear the thoughts of one of them.
Queen said to kill 'em all. Didn't say what we can and cannot do with them before that.
Instinctively, Alaria tightened her hold on the hilt of her sword. Without answering Alaria's question, the knights unsheathed their weapons. The one looked at the other and asked,
What do you say, boys? Shall we have some fun first?
The one whose thoughts Alaria had read said,
She's a pretty one, ain't she?
He then looked at her and smiled a smile that caused shivers to run down her spine.
What do you say, pretty lady? Put the sword down and we won't hurt ya. Much.
Inhaling deeply, Alaria clasped her sword tighter than she ever had and hoped she would remember her training. It had been nearly 10 years since she'd fought. Sensing that Alaria wasn't going to back down, the knights grew irritated and one lunged for her. Using her telepathy, Alaria anticipated his attack and sidestepped before bringing her sword across his back. With a cry, he fell to the floor, alive, but in great pain. With a loud grunt, one of the other soldiers struck their sword at her. She barely had time to register before she blocked with a weak parry. She stepped back, but quickly spun to dodge an attack from behind from the other standing soldier. She held her own, her past training coming naturally to her. One of the knight's swords flew through the air and slammed down where it would have struck Alaria's head had she not blocked it with her own sword. The iron from the knight's sword clashed loudly against the steel of Alaria's, and the momentum pushed her backward slightly. Breathing heavily, Alaria used the tip of her sword to swing underneath the knight's before she knocked the hilt of her blade against his wrist with all her might. The knight dropped his sword in agony, but before he could pick it up again, Alaria's sword pierced through his heart. His face held shock as he spat up blood, and he dropped to the floor the second Alaria pulled her sword back. Alaria's victory was short-lived as the remaining knight kicked her in the back. She tumbled to the ground on top of the dead knight, before she turned to see her attacker looming over her. She rolled out of the way just as the sword was slammed into the ground, lodging into his dead companion instead. He quickly pulled it out and advanced again. Alaria tried to reach for her fallen sword, but before she could, her hand was crushed under the weight of the attacker's foot. She hissed in pain and raised her other hand to grab his ankle, but he kicked her in the chest, sending her rolling over, breathless. Alaria tried to move, but the pain was overwhelming. She tried to find the will to fight, even though she knew that she couldn't win. The knight raised his sword, but it clashed to the ground not much later. Alaria's eyes widened as her eyes found the arrow that was shot between her attacker's eyes. He fell to the ground, and Alaria turned to her room door, which was ajar. Shemmai lowered her bow and ran straight to her mother.
Mama, are you okay?
She asked, helping Alaria to her feet. There was so much going through Alaria's mind at that moment. She never wanted Shemmai to be a killer. Ending a life would haunt her daughter for days to come. As much as Alaria wanted to say something regarding the situation, she knew there was no time. She grabbed Shemmai's hand and rushed through the doors as quickly as possible, given the amount of pain she was in. As soon as they stepped out, they were greeted by the sight of villagers being slaughtered by the Queensguard. Those that hadn't yet been killed were running around trying to find any way to escape. It was a massacre, a bloodbath. Alaria quickly took Shemmai to a secluded and shadowed alley, where she heard no voices in her head, indicating that they were alone and safe. She held Shemmai by her shoulders and lowered herself down. She tried her best to hide the fear from her eyes, so she smiled faintly.
You are very brave, love,
she said gently.
I know that must have been so scary, and it's okay to feel different.
Alaria never thought she would need to have this conversation with Shemmai. The first kill always sticks by you. Something inside you dies when you end another life. Shemmai blinked in confusion.
But I don't feel any different,
she said with ease.
He was trying to hurt you, so I killed him. I'll kill anyone who comes between us.
Alaria hid her shock at these words. Concern flooded her chest, but she had no time to ponder on it.
We have to leave Azgarak at once.
She stood upright and peered out of the shadows where the massacre was reaching its peak.
Why are they doing this?
Shemmai asked with a small voice, as Alaria pulled back from the shadows. Before she could answer, a large shadow swallowed the village. Every head turned to the sky, and Alaria's eyes widened as she saw what it was. A dragon with scales of crimson and talons of ebony soared up ahead. It was so close to the village that the wind from its wings blew Alaria's hair back. Only several moments passed before the dragon opened its mouth and breathed fire onto the town. It paused and let out a loud, blood-curdling roar, almost as menacing as the queen on its back.
What was that?
Addom faced Zaria. They could barely see one another from their position in an abandoned shop. Zaria peered through the window and caught sight of the dragon, who was burning the town a distance away from them.
Dragon!
She faced Addom with fear-filled eyes. Addom had rarely seen Zaria scared, and her expression did little to help his own nerves.
We have to leave,
Addom said, and Zaria started shaking her head in protest almost immediately, which urged him to continue.
We have to, Zaria. We're gonna die here if we don't.
We'll die if we leave this spot. How do you think I survived before I found you? By hiding, not running?
We can't hide. She's going to burn the village to the ground and us with it if we don't go.
Addom looked desperately at her, keeping his eyes firmly on hers. He said,
Zaria, I know.
Know what?
Zaria asked in confusion.
I know you're one of them. You think I haven't figured it out?
He asked.
There were so many situations where you should have been dead or hurt, yet you always healed quicker than usual.
Zaria shut her eyes tightly.
Addom,
She opened her eyes and looked desperately at him.
I'm not one of them. I have their powers, yes, but I'm an Azgarian. I always have been.
She refused to associate with the Queen and her allies.
So if you know I have healing powers, you know I can protect us.
She laced her hand in his and squeezed. He sighed softly.
Not if we're burnt to ash, Zaria.
He held her gaze.
Grunner's right. You're destined for more than this. If you can help stop the Queen and end her tyranny, why don't you? Let's escape. You and me. Then we'll figure the rest out.
Addom lowered his voice as some Queensguard members passed by the shop, though they didn't spare it a glance. The dragon hovered in the air a bit further away, but was quickly burning the village. It wouldn't be long before it reached them. Zaria sighed.
Do you really think we can make a change? I'm one girl and you're one boy. The Queen has a whole army. I don't want to risk your life. You're all I have left.
Addom squeezed her hand in return and pulled Zaria to his chest in a hug.
I won't leave you. I promise. You're my sister, remember?
Zaria melted in his embrace and held him tightly before she pulled away with a determined nod.
Okay.
She said.
We escaped the village and we figured out from there.
She figured Grunner would have left the village a while ago, and if he hadn't, he was surely dead by now. So it was up to her and Addom to figure out how to find her sister and stop the Queen. The two slowly emerged from the shop and into alleys to avoid the Queen's guard. They were nearly out of the village before they were surrounded. Zaria breathed nervously, but turned to Addom. She found courage in his presence, a reason to live. She was going to make sure she didn't lose him. The siblings fought bravely, Zaria with her daggers and Addom with a discarded sword he found on the floor, most likely from a fallen knight. Zaria almost couldn't believe it when they won. They likely owed it to their many bar brawls and the fatigue the soldiers obviously displayed. The three knights of the Queensguard laid on the floor, lifeless. Zaria thought they would have put on a better fight considering they were trained soldiers, but she was thankful for the victory. She turned to look at her brother, who was breathing heavily. He had a cut on his cheek and a stab wound on his arm, but was otherwise unharmed. The alley was quiet and was poorly lit by the flames burning a distance away. Zaria walked to Addom and placed one hand on his cheek and the other on his arm. Now that he knew what she could do, she felt comfortable to heal him. A soft warmth spread through her fingertips, and Addom was void of any wounds by the time she pulled her hands back. Addom opened his mouth to thank her, but when he did, a sword was pushed through the back of his head and out of his open mouth, dripping with his blood. He barely let out a sound as life drained from his eyes. The sword was pulled from his skull, and he fell onto her, lifeless and staining her clothes with the blood pouring out of him. The man who had killed Addom had used his last remaining strength to do so and fell to the ground not much later, breathing out his final huff of air. Zaria's face held shock, hurt, and disbelief as she lowered herself and Addom onto the floor. She moved him so that he was laying on his back with lifeless eyes staring at the sky.
Wake up, Addom! Come on, wake up!
She said with a shaky voice as denial crept in despite the blood that flowed out of Addom's skull and onto the ground of the dark alley.
We're close! We're almost out of the village! Just a few more minutes and we're out!
Her words were coupled with tears that streamed down her face as she stopped shaking her brother and held his face in her hands.
I can fix this.
She told herself, nodding.
Yeah, I can fix this.
Despite her statement, Even a healer couldn't bring back a life that was lost. She tried, and she tried again, but the warmth that her healing brought turned cold on Addam's lifeless body. Disbelief became anger not much later.
You said you wouldn't leave me!
She screamed at him as she slammed the bloody palms of her hands onto his chest.
You said you wouldn't leave me! You lied!
Anger turned into helplessness as her body racked with sobs.
You promised.
Her voice was barely above a whisper as she leaned down to hug her brother's body, sobbing and wishing they had never left their hiding spot. Grunner ducked under the swing of a sword and impaled the attacker not much later. The mind controller was covered in blood, though none was his own. He was already out of Azgarak, unaware of the attack, when he heard the dragon roar. He had rushed back without a second thought. Had it not been for Shemmai and Alaria, he wouldn't have come back, but he couldn't bear the thought of them being killed. He had to find them. Sensing their minds with his power had given him a location, and the fact that he could sense them both meant that they were still alive. It had taken Grunner a while to reach them, but then he found them. He dropped his daggers to the ground, and it clattered, echoing across the walls of the alley. He couldn't contain his relief and happiness upon seeing them unharmed. They looked up, and they heard the sound of his daggers dropping, and it wasn't long before Shemmai was hugging Grunner's legs, and Alaria was staring at him with an expression of both happiness and disbelief.
I thought you left.
Alaria sounded exasperated, and Grunner straightened up from hugging Shemmai to drink in Alaria and all her battle-worn beauty. He nodded softly.
I did.
Barely a second passed before Alaria's own arms were wrapped around Grunner. He held them close, relishing in their warmth before he pulled away with a troubled expression.
We have to leave. Now.
That was the plan.
Alaria said as Grunner picked up his daggers. He made his way to the entrance of the alley and peered through. The street was silent and littered with the bloodied bodies of innocent people. There were a few dead Queensguard knights, but they were few in comparison to how many of the villagers had died. Grunner led Alaria and Shemmai out of the alley and stayed close to the walls as he guided them towards the outskirts of the city. Suddenly, Alaria turned, and her eyes widened.
Grunner, look out!
She warned, and he turned to see a lone member of the Queensguard raising his sword to attack. Before Grunner could even parry, the man's head was sliced clean off his shoulder and fell to the ground like a ball. The body fell next, and when it did, Zaria stood behind it with a bloodied sword in hand. Grunner didn't know this, but she was wielding the sword that killed her brother. She had taken it as a reminder of the vengeance she now held for the Queen and anyone who served her. Grunner almost recoiled at the sight of her. She was nearly drenched in blood, her cheeks stained with dried tears, and her eyes red as if she'd been crying. Apart from the physical, Grunner noticed something in her eyes as well. Something that wasn't there before. It was as if the glint in her eyes was now put out and replaced with a hatred so evident it nearly caused the hairs on the back of Grunner's neck to stand on edge. It didn't pass Alaria how Shemmai's eyes had glittered and danced with excitement when the knight was decapitated.
I wish to find my sister,
Zaria said darkly. The dragon shrieked in the distance as it started making its way to the unscathed part of the village, the very part where they stood. Zaria paid the dragon no mind when she said,
to put an end to the injustice.
Grunner wanted to smile, but it wasn't the time nor the place, so instead he nodded.
Addom?
He asked. The hint of vulnerability and sadness that etched onto Zaria's face at the mention of him was answer enough. While Grunner hadn't known the boy long, he could see how close the two were. The entirety of Zaria wanting to stay in Azgarak was because of him. Grunner's voice was soft.
For what it's worth, I'm sorry.
Zaria smiled sadly and nodded, even though Grunner's apology was worth nothing to her. It couldn't bring Addom back.
We must move. Now.
Alaria urged as the dragon neared them, burning the village in its wake. The four of them began running, nearing the gates of the city with the dragon hot on their heels. They were fast, but not fast enough to outrun a dragon. Something had to be done soon if they were to survive, but the idea that Grunner had in his mind was too risky, and he wasn't sure if he was strong enough. He looked to Alaria, then Shemmai, then Zaria, and felt a wave of determination wash over him. They could feel the heat from the flames as the dragon neared them. It was seconds from reaching them before Grunner suddenly turned.
Grunner, no!
Alaria yelled when she realized he stopped, but when she turned to look, she was amazed. The dragon stopped breathing fire and flew by harmlessly before turning and directing new flames at another part of the village. Grunner dropped to his knees as his head throbbed. He had never controlled something that big before. He never even attempted to control the Titan Bear.
Come on, get up, you're okay.
Zaria rushed to his side and pulled him up, examining him. He breathed deeply and nodded as the pain in his head subsided slightly.
I'm fine.
It wasn't a complete lie, but Grunner felt tired and sore.
Let's go. We're almost out,
he said, and they began running again. Once they were out of Azgarak and hidden in the trees, Grunner slumped against one and controlled his breathing. Alaria was by his side almost immediately, providing him with water from the flask that had been attached to his belt. She held it to his mouth, and he drank as if he never had water in years. When Grunner was done drinking, Alaria put the skin away and smiled gently at him as his breathing evened out.
Thank you,
she told him, looking gently into his eyes.
They're coming back.
Grunner smiled softly in response.
I almost lost you,
he said as he reached towards her and softly tucked some stray hairs behind her ear.
From now on, I go where you go.
Alaria smiled a bit and nodded curtly, despite the eerie feeling in her chest. Zaria's eyes remained on Azgarak as it burned in the distance. Her home, the place she grew up in, was gone, and with it, the person she most held dear. It pained her to leave Addom's body, but she had taken his jacket and wore it so that she could always carry a piece of him with her. She looked up at the red and black dragon that tormented the sky. Her anger was not misplaced. She knew exactly who to blame. Zaria's eyes shifted to the queen riding on the back of her dragon, no bigger than a speck from the distance. Zaria's eyes burnt with hatred, and her blood was poisoned with loathing. She would do whatever it took to see the queen dethroned and killed. It would be even better if it was at her hands. She turned to Grunner and Alaria, who were by a tree, while Shemmai leaned against another one to catch her breath. Zaria stepped towards Grunner, and with a dark voice, she said,
Shall we journey north now? I'd like to meet my sister.
Artificial Sun, Chapter 14.